The sky shouldn't be black at noon, but over Germany in 1944, it was. Black with flak bursts, black with smoke, black with the exhaust of 1,000 bombers flying in formation, waiting to die. I grew up in Nebraska, farm country, wide open skies where you could see forever. As a kid, I'd lie in the wheat fields and watch clouds drift by, dreaming about what it would be like to touch them. Careful what you dream for. Robert Mitchell was my name then. 21 years old when I enlisted in 1942, right after Pearl Harbor. Everyone was signing up. Felt like the whole country was going to war. My father had fought in the first one, came back with a limp and nightmares, told me not to go, said no war was worth it. I went anyway. Thought I knew better, thought this war was different. We were fighting real evil, fighting for something that mattered. And I wanted to fly. Always wanted to fly. The Army Air Corps took me, sent me to flight school in Texas. The training was intense but thrilling. Learning to handle a B-17 Flying Fortress, 4 engines, 10 crew members, bristling with .50 caliber machine guns. They called them Flying Fortresses for a reason. Made you feel invincible. They taught us formation flying, navigation, bombing procedures. Told us the B-17 could take incredible punishment and keep flying. Showed us statistics about how well protected we'd be, how our fighter escorts would keep the Germans off us, how our armor and armament would see us through. They made it sound almost safe. I got my wings in October 1943, made second lieutenant. They assigned me to the 8th Air Force in England, the Mighty 8th, they called it. We'd be bombing Germany in daylight, hitting factories and rail yards and oil refineries, destroying the Nazi war machine from the air. I wrote to my girl Sarah back in Nebraska, told her I'd be fine, that I'd be home before she knew it, told her to plan the wedding for when I got back. I believed it too, believed in the mission, in the aircraft, in our training, believed we'd make it through. Then I flew my first mission over Germany and learned what flak really meant. We arrived at our base in East Anglia in November 1943. Cold, wet, miserable English weather. The airfield was mud and Quonset huts and rows of B-17 being patched up from previous missions. The veterans looked at us new crews with something like pity. They didn't say much, didn't need to. You could see it in their eyes, that 1,000-yard stare we'd all learned soon enough. My crew was assigned to a B-17G named Memphis Belle Jr. The original Belle had completed her tour and gone home. We thought the name was good luck. Our crew was 10 men, me as pilot, Jack Henderson as co-pilot, Tommy Garcia as navigator, Mike Sullivan as bombardier, and 6 gunners scattered throughout the aircraft. Ball turret, waist guns, tail gun, top turret. All of us kids, really. I was the oldest at 21. They briefed us on our first mission at 0400 hours, December 2nd, 1943. Target was a ball-bearing factory in Schweinfurt, deep into Germany, 6 hours round trip. Expected heavy flak and fighter opposition. The briefing officer pulled back the curtain, showing the route on the map. Red string stretching from England deep into Germany. Someone in the back groaned. The veterans just nodded. They knew. Schweinfurt's been hit before, the intelligence officer said. The Germans know we're coming. Their flak batteries will be ready. Expect fighters all the way to the target and back. He made it sound so clinical, so matter-of-fact. We suited up in the pre-dawn darkness. Heavy flight suits against the cold. It would be 40 below at altitude. Flak vests that were supposed to stop shrapnel. They weighed 30 pounds and didn't work half the time. Parachutes. Mae West life vests in case we went down in the channel. I did my walk around of the aircraft, checking everything. Props, engines, control surfaces. Tommy was loading maps and checking his navigation equipment. Sullivan was checking the Norden bomb site. The gunners were loading ammunition, thousands of rounds of .50 caliber. The engines coughed to life one by one, that deep rumble you felt in your chest. All around the airfield, bombers were starting up, exhaust smoke drifting across the field. The sound was incredible. Hundreds of Wright Cyclone engines warming up. We taxied into position and waited for the green flare. When it came, we rolled. One by one, the bombers thundered down the runway and lifted into the gray English dawn. Formation flying was critical. We assembled over England, 300 bombers forming up into combat boxes. Tight formations so our guns could provide mutual protection. Each aircraft just yards from the next. One mistake and we'd collide. We climbed to 25,000 feet and turned east, crossing the Channel. The coast of France appeared below. Occupied Europe. Enemy territory. No turning back now. P-47 Thunderbolts escorted us part way, but they didn't have the range to go all the way to the target. At a certain point, they waggled their wings and turned for home. We were on our own. That's when the fighters came. Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 109s diving out of the sun. The intercom exploded with voices. Fighters at 2 o'clock high. Bogies at 6. Coming in at 9. The whole aircraft shook as our gunners opened fire. Tracers streaking out. Shell casings rolling around the flight deck. The smell of cordite and hot metal. A B-17 ahead of us took a direct hit. Just exploded. 1 second it was there, next second just debris and falling bodies. No parachutes, no survivors. We pressed on, had to. The mission was the mission. Then we reached the flak zone over Schweinfurt, and I learned what hell really looked like. The first bursts appeared ahead of us, black puffs of smoke materializing out of nothing. Then more, then hundreds. The sky turned black with them. 88-millimeter flak shells. They'd explode at a preset altitude, sending shrapnel in every direction. Each burst was deadly at 100 yards, and there were thousands of them. We had to fly straight and level through it, had to hold formation. Couldn't evade, couldn't dodge. The bombardier needed a stable platform for the bomb run, so we just flew into it, into that wall of exploding metal, and prayed. The sound was like nothing else. Not individual explosions, but one continuous roar. Crump, crump, crump. The aircraft shuddered with each nearby burst. Shrapnel rattled against the fuselage like hail, like someone throwing gravel at a tin roof, except the gravel was razor-sharp metal moving at thousands of feet per second. A piece of flak came through the windscreen, just punched through the plexiglass and buried itself in the back of Jack's seat. Missed his head by inches. We looked at each other, couldn't speak, just kept flying. Another burst underneath us, lifted the whole aircraft up, felt like a giant hand slapping us from below. Red lights on the instrument panel. Number 3 engine was hit. Oil pressure dropping, temperature rising. Feather 3, I shouted to Jack. He hit the button. The propeller blades turned edge on and stopped spinning. We could still fly on 3 engines. Had to. The formation was taking losses. Bombers falling out all around us. Some exploded. Some just broke up, pieces tumbling earthward. Some spun down, trailing smoke and fire. You'd see parachutes sometimes. White flowers blooming against the black smoke. Most times you didn't. 2 minutes to target, Sullivan called from the nose. 2 minutes. 120 seconds flying straight through this. Every second an eternity. A burst right in front of us. So close the smoke washed over the cockpit. Couldn't see anything for a moment. When it cleared, my hands were shaking on the controls. Jack's face was white as paper. The bomber to our left took a direct hit. The whole waist section just disappeared in the explosion. The plane broke in half. The front half tumbled forward, the tail section fell away behind. I saw a body thrown clear. No parachute, just falling. We'd trained with that crew, played cards with them last night. Tommy something. I couldn't remember his last name. 30 seconds, Sullivan said. His voice was steady, professional. How was he so calm? The flak got worse. Didn't think it could, but it did. The Germans knew exactly where we were going. The bearing factories were vital to their war effort. Every gun in the region was trained on this corridor. Bombs away! I felt the aircraft lurch upward as 6,000 pounds of bombs dropped from the bay. We were done. Mission complete. Now we just had to survive the flight home. I started a gentle turn, following the lead aircraft out of the target area. Still had to hold formation. Still couldn't evade. More flak. A burst below us. Shrapnel tore through the bottom of the aircraft. Someone screamed on the intercom. One of the waist gunners. "Jimmy's hit. Jimmy's hit bad." Couldn't do anything about it. Had to keep flying. Had to get us out of here. Number 2 engine started smoking. More hits, more damage. We were leaking fuel, losing hydraulic pressure, bleeding from a dozen wounds. But we were still flying, still in formation, still had a chance. The flak finally thinned as we left the target area behind. But the fighters were waiting. They knew wounded bombers meant easy kills. They came at us in waves. Our gunners fired back, but we'd used up most of our ammunition. And Jimmy was down. His gun silent. A gap in our defense. A 109 made a head-on pass, saw his gun sparkling, saw the tracers coming straight at us. Cannon shells walked up the nose. Sullivan screamed. The plexiglass in the nose shattered. Wind roared through the cockpit at 200 miles per hour. We couldn't see Sullivan anymore. Couldn't see anything but blood splashed across what was left of the bombardier's compartment. Tommy crawled forward to check on him. Came back shaking his head. Sullivan was gone. Our bombardier. Kid from Boston who'd never stopped talking about his girl back home. We flew on. What else could we do? We were still 2 hours from England. 2 hours over enemy territory with 2 engines damaged, holes everywhere, 2 dead crew members, and fighters still hunting us. The formation was shredded. We'd started with 18 bombers in our box. I counted 9 still flying. The rest were gone, falling, burning, exploding. 180 men, most of them dead or captured now, and we still had to make it home. We made it back to England. Barely. Number 2 engine quit over the channel. We were flying on 2 engines by then, losing altitude, the aircraft shaking itself apart. I put her down hard at the first airfield I could find. Wasn't even our base. The landing gear barely held. We rolled to a stop and just sat there for a moment. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the crew started getting out. Helping Jimmy down, he'd been hit in the leg but would survive. Carrying Sullivan's body out of the nose compartment, wrapped in a tarp because there wasn't much left to carry. I counted bullet holes later. Over 200. The aircraft looked like Swiss cheese. The mechanics took one look and shook their heads. Memphis Bell Jr. would never fly again. That was mission 1. We had 24 more to go to complete a tour. They gave us a new plane. New B-17, same old war. We flew again 3 days later. Then 2 days after that. Then again and again and again. You learned things. Learned that the flak over the Ruhr Valley was the worst. Happy Valley, we called it. Bitter joke. Learned that fighters would go after the stragglers. The damaged bombers falling out of formation. Learned that ball turret gunners had the worst job, trapped in a plexiglass sphere under the aircraft, first to die if the landing gear failed. Learned that you couldn't make friends with replacement crews. The odds said they wouldn't make it past 5 missions. Every mission was the same nightmare. Wake up at 0400. Briefing, suit up, pre-flight, take off, form up, fly into Germany, fighters, flak, drop bombs, fight your way home, land, count the missing, do it again tomorrow. The losses were staggering. Some days we'd send up 300 bombers and 30 wouldn't come back. 300 men dead or captured, every single day. Our crew got hit on mission 7, flak over Bremen, took out our hydraulics, had to hand crank the landing gear down, thought we were going to crash, made it somehow. Mission 12, fighters got us over Hanover. Tail gunner killed instantly. Top turret gunner wounded. We fought them off, but lost 3 more bombers from our group. Mission 15, we watched a bomber collide with another during formation. Both went down. 20 men gone in an instant. No enemy action. Just accident. Just bad luck in a war full of bad luck. Jack started drinking heavily between missions. Most of us did. What else could you do? Sit in the officers' club and get drunk and try not to think about tomorrow's mission. Try not to calculate the odds. The math was simple and brutal. Each mission had about a 7% loss rate. Do that 25 times and statistically you weren't making it home. The numbers didn't lie. We stopped talking about after the war. Stopped making plans. Lived mission to mission. If you survived today, maybe you'd survive tomorrow. That was as far ahead as you could think. The new crews kept coming. Fresh faces full of nervous energy. We'd watch them at briefings, see the fear and excitement mixed together. Remember when we'd been like that? Back when we thought the armor would protect us, the formation would keep us safe, the mission meant something? Now we knew better. The armor was a joke. Flak went through it like paper. The formation just meant you died alongside your friends instead of alone. And the missions, did they even matter? We were hitting the same targets over and over. The Germans just rebuilt them. But we kept flying. What choice did we have? Refuse and they'd court-martial you for cowardice. Crack up and they'd send you home in disgrace. So you climbed into that aircraft every time they told you to and flew into the flak and the fighters and tried to survive one more mission. Tommy started keeping a diary, writing down the names of everyone we knew who didn't make it. Had to start a second notebook by Mission 18. Said he wanted to remember them. I told him to stop. Better to forget. He kept writing anyway. By Mission 20, only 3 original crew members were left. Me, Jack, and Tommy. The others had been killed or wounded and replaced. The new guys were competent enough, but it wasn't the same. Wasn't my crew anymore. We were so close to finishing. 5 more missions. Just 5 more and we could go home. Could leave this nightmare behind. That's when you got most dangerous. When you started believing you might actually make it. When hope crept back in. That's when you made mistakes. Mission 23, March 6th, 1944. Target was Berlin. Big Willie, they called it. The most heavily defended city in Germany. Every flak gun in the Reich protecting Hitler's capital. I didn't want to fly that day. Had a bad feeling. The kind of premonition that made your skin crawl. But you couldn't refuse. 2 more missions after this and we'd be done. 2 more. The briefing was somber. Everyone knew Berlin meant maximum casualties. The intelligence officer didn't sugarcoat it. Expect heavy losses, he said. Just like that. Heavy losses. Like it was weather forecast. We took off in the pre-dawn darkness. 350 bombers heading for Berlin, the largest raid yet. They said it would break German morale, end the war faster, save lives in the long run. The formation was perfect. Textbook box after box of B-17s stretching for miles. Looked invincible from inside, like nothing could stop us. The fighters hit us over Holland, more than I'd ever seen. They came in waves, coordinated attacks, veteran pilots who knew what they were doing. The sky filled with tracers and smoke and falling bombers. We lost 30 aircraft before we even reached Germany. 300 men, gone before we got to the target. Then came the flak. I'd been through flak 22 times before. Thought I'd seen the worst of it. I was wrong. Berlin was different. The whole sky turned black. Not patches of flak. Solid wall of explosions. You couldn't see through it. Couldn't see anything but smoke and fire and metal. We flew into it because that's what we did. Straight and level. Bomb run. No evasion. Just flying into certain death and hoping statistics would spare you. The hits came immediately. Shrapnel everywhere. Number 4 engine exploded, just blew apart. Pieces of cowling and propeller spinning off into space. I hit the feather button, but it didn't matter. The engine was gone. More hits. The whole left wing was shredded. I could see daylight through the holes. How were we still flying? A burst underneath us. The ball turret gunner screamed. The intercom went dead. Then came back someone else on the line. Ball turret's gone. Just gone. Peterson's gone.
Peterson kid from Iowa, 20 years old. Been with us since Mission 16. Told jokes that weren't funny, but we laughed anyway.
Another burst. This one took out the tail section. Tail gunner's position just disintegrated. No scream, no time. Just there 1 second, gone the next. We were dying. The aircraft was coming apart around us, but we were still on the bomb run. Still had to drop our bombs. Still had to complete the mission because that's what we'd been trained to do. "Bombs away," Tommy shouted. I started turning immediately, didn't wait for the formation. We were too damaged. Had to get out of there or we'd die over Berlin. Number 3 engine quit. We were down to 2 engines now. The aircraft was shaking violently. The controls were mushy. Hydraulics were gone. I was fighting it with everything I had. Jack was helping, both of us on the controls, trying to keep her level. Below us, Berlin was burning from our bombs. We'd hit the target, did our job, and now we were going to die for it. "We're not going to make it," Jack said. First time he'd ever said it out loud. We'd both been thinking it every mission, but saying it made it real. "Yes, we are," I said. Didn't believe it, but I said it anyway. We limped west, lost altitude constantly, down to 15,000 feet, then 10,000. The cold was vicious at altitude, but now we were low enough to breathe without oxygen. Small mercies. The fighters found us. Lone bomber, struggling, obvious easy kill. They came in for the attack. Our gunners fought back, but we were down to 3 working guns. Not enough. Not nearly enough. A 20-millimeter cannon shell came through the cockpit, went between me and Jack, took out half the instrument panel, plexiglass and metal and wiring exploding everywhere. I felt something hit my shoulder, looked down. My flight suit was torn open, blood spreading, couldn't feel it. Shock, maybe. Or adrenaline. Just kept flying. Jack was hit too, face cut up from plexiglass, blood running down into his collar. He kept working the controls, kept fighting. We made it to Holland. Don't ask me how. The aircraft should have fallen apart. The laws of physics said we should be dead, but we were still flying. Then number 1 engine caught fire. We were down to 1 engine. 1. A B-17 needs 4 engines to fly properly, 3 to barely maintain altitude. We had 1, and it was working overtime, screaming with the strain. We weren't going to make it to England, weren't going to make it to the Channel. We're barely going to make it another 5 minutes. "We have to bail out," Jack said. He was right. I knew he was right. But this was our aircraft, our fortress. It had brought us through 23 missions. Couldn't just abandon her. "There's a field," Tommy called from the navigator's station. 2 miles ahead. Looks flat. I aimed for it. Couldn't see much through the blood and smoke and shattered windscreen. Just kept the nose pointed forward and hoped. The last engine quit a mile out. We were gliding now. A 70,000-pound glider with the aerodynamics of a brick. The field rushed up. I pulled back on the controls. They barely responded. We hit hard. Harder than any landing I'd ever done. The landing gear collapsed immediately. We slid across the field on the belly, tearing up earth, throwing debris everywhere. We stopped. Finally stopped. Silence, except for the creak of tortured metal and the ringing in my ears. "Everyone out," I shouted. "She might burn." We scrambled out through the waste door. 7 of us left from a crew of 10. Peterson, the tail gunner, and one of the waist gunners gone. 3 dead for Berlin. We stood there in that field in Holland, occupied Holland, enemy territory, and watched our bomber smoke and settle. She'd gotten us home. Almost. Close enough. Then we heard engines, trucks, German voices. We'd survived the mission only to be captured. I spent 14 months as a prisoner of war. Stalag Luft III, the famous one where they had the Great Escape. I wasn't involved in that. Happened before I arrived. But I saw the results. 50 men executed by the Gestapo for trying to escape. 50 men murdered for doing their duty. The camp was cold, hungry, and boring. But after 23 missions through flak and fighters, boring was almost a relief. At least I wasn't being shot at every day. At least I could sleep without dreaming about falling bombers and burning men. Jack was with me. Tommy, too. We'd made it through together, survived together, been captured together. The three of us looked after each other through that long year in the camp. The war ended in May 1945. We were liberated by Patton's Third Army, walked out of that camp into a world that had kept turning without us. Got processed, debriefed, sent home as heroes. Heroes. That's what they called us. Ticker tape parades, medals, people thanking us for our service, telling us we'd won the war, saved the world, made the ultimate sacrifice. But I didn't feel like a hero, felt like a survivor, and survival wasn't the same as victory. I made it back to Nebraska in July 1945. Sarah was waiting. We got married like we'd planned, bought a small house, tried to build the life we'd dreamed about before the war. But I wasn't the man she'd fallen in love with. That Robert Mitchell had died somewhere over Germany. Maybe over Schweinfurt on that first mission. Maybe over Berlin on the last one. Didn't matter when. He was gone. The nightmares came every night. I'd be back in the cockpit, flak exploding around me, engines on fire, controls not responding. Or I'd be watching bombers fall out of formation, counting the parachutes that never came. Or I'd see Sullivan's blood splashed across the bombardier compartment, Peterson's ball turret just gone. I'd wake up screaming. Sarah would try to comfort me, but how could she understand? How could anyone who wasn't there understand what it was like to fly into that black sky day after day, knowing the odds, knowing most of you wouldn't make it? I couldn't stand loud noises. Thunder would send me diving for cover. Car backfires made me flinch. The sound of planes overhead, any planes, made my heart race and my hands shake. I got a job at the local airport. Thought being around aircraft might help. Thought I could recapture some of what I'd loved about flying before the war. But every time I saw a plane take off, all I could see were the ones that didn't come back. All I could hear was the crump of flak and the rattle of machine guns. I quit after 3 months. Couldn't do it. Jack called me sometimes. We'd talk about nothing, really, just checking in, making sure the other was still there. He was struggling too, drinking heavily. His marriage was falling apart. Tommy had it worst. Shot himself in 1949. Left a note that just said, "I'm sorry." We both knew what he was sorry for surviving when so many didn't, for carrying it all these years, for not being strong enough to carry it any longer. I went to his funeral, stood there looking at the casket and thought about the kid who'd navigated us through 23 missions, who'd kept his diary of the dead, who'd made it through the war only to lose the peace. The Air Force loved to talk about the strategic bombing campaign, how we'd destroyed German industry, how we'd shortened the war, how our sacrifice had saved countless lives. Maybe they were right. I don't know. I'm not a strategist or historian. All I know is what I saw. I saw good men burned alive in falling bombers, saw them cut apart by flak, saw them freeze at altitude or bleed out in shattered aircraft, Saw them die by the hundreds, by the thousands, so we could drop bombs on factories that would be rebuilt in months. Was it worth it? Did we accomplish anything? I can't answer that. The people who can are all the ones who didn't come back. I'm 82 years old now. The war ended 63 years ago. Sarah passed away 5 years back. My children are grown with families of their own. I should be at peace, should be able to look back on my life and feel satisfied. But I'm still up there sometimes. Still 21 years old, fighting for control of a dying bomber, watching the altimeter unwind, knowing we're not going to make it. Still seeing Peterson disappear when the ball turret exploded. Still hearing Sullivan scream when the cannon shells came through the nose. They make movies about the bomber war now, show brave men in gleaming aircraft, dramatic music, heroic sacrifices. They make it look noble, clean, like there was glory in it. There wasn't. There was just fear and death and the grinding mathematics of attrition. We were chess pieces in someone else's game, pawns sacrificing ourselves to capture a rook or a bishop, never knowing if it mattered, never knowing if anyone would remember. The sky over Germany was black at noon, black with flak, black with smoke, black with death. And somewhere up there in that black sky, the boy I was died along with all the others. What came back wasn't a hero, just a ghost who learned to pretend to be alive, who went through the motions of normal life while still flying missions in his head, who jumped at loud noises and couldn't watch fireworks and woke up screaming from dreams of falling. They called us the greatest generation, said we saved the world. Maybe we did. But nobody talks about the cost, not the ones who died. They get monuments and memorial days. But the ones who survived, the ones who came back broken, the ones who spent the rest of their lives fighting a war that ended decades ago. I completed 23 missions, 350 men in my group when I started. 47 finished their tours, 300 dead or captured. Those are just statistics to most people, numbers in a history book. But I knew them, flew with them, watched them die, and I carry them still, every single one. The sky shouldn't be black at noon, but it was. And part of me is still up there, still flying through that flak, still waiting for the hit that finally brings me down. They say I survived the war. They're wrong. I'm still fighting it. We all are.